Dear friends, it's a real pleasure to talk with you about an important issue. The title is The United Nations must come forward in Ukraine to demand the withdrawal of Russian troops. I'm a lawyer specialized in economic and political themes. Currently, it would seem that the military conflict between the Russian and Ukrainian troops has stabilized because Ukraine was provided with American, British, and other countries' anti-tank weapons and anti-car and anti-aircraft missiles, and has managed to contain the Russian advance. Faced with this circumstance, the aggressor has begun to use long-range missiles that allows it to destroy buildings, houses, hospitals, schools, factories, and everything it can reach of, in order to undermine the psychological resistance of the Ukrainians. If this continues, there will be only rabble and starving people searching for the remains of their loved ones left on the land. This is not acceptable for the civilized world. The United Nations has the obligation to take action and to put an end to this attack on the human race. Let's take a look at the background of the topic. Excuse me. The United Nations was created in 1945 and signed the Charter of the United Nations, which is a legal instrument intended to guarantee not only peace between countries, but the rights of all men to live in freedom. In this first article, the Charter says, take collective action and eliminate threats to the peace and suppress acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace. It is clear that the United Nations have to adopt energical measures when acts of aggression occur that may pose a danger to humanity. Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24, 2022, without invoking any reason and without truce, but with troops perfectly prepared to attack without distinguishing military objectives from civilians and without respecting women, children, hospitals, or the schools. Their attitude shows that the real goal is to take over Ukraine and take away the independence it has had since 1991, to end existing democracy and respect for human rights. Ukraine knows that if it falls into the hands of the Russians, it is left without the freedom it enjoys and becomes a servant of dictatorship. For these reasons, it is fighting with formidable courage. The rejection and the outrage caused by Russia's invasion is virtually unanimous. Hundreds of millions of people repudiate what happened. The United Nations Security Council immediately condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine by an absolute majority of its members. But Russia, as a member with the right of veto, prevented the validity of the Security Council resolution. The word veto is not in the Charter of the United Nations. Please let me insist on this phrase. The word veto is not in the Charter of the United Nations. Notwithstanding, Article 27 requires that when it comes to substantive issues, the unanimity of the five permanent members is required, namely China, United States, France, United Kingdom, and Russia. It is hard to accept the disagreement of only one can prevent the validity of a resolution. That disagreement has been called veto. That lack of unanimity on the part of the five permanent countries should not be considered a tacit permission by the Security Council to give to one of them the authorization to invade another country member of the United Nations. The war initiated by Russia constitutes a flagrant contradiction with the above-mentioned purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, which are, we said, suppress acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace. Consequently, Article 27 cannot be interpreted as permitting the initiation of a war to seize another country or the imposition of its absolute disregard for human rights. The United Nations was created in 1945, a few months after the end of World War II, to end all wars. On the side of the winners, the 5 countries mentioned above, in our view, were in the Security Council as guarantors of peace. Those which have joined the United Nations have not done so to give these 5 countries the right to invade the territory of other countries, but to be exempt from aggression such as that suffered by Ukraine in open violation of international law. On March 3rd, a special session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, which is made up of 193 countries, condemned the Russian invasion in a vote that had 141 in favor, 5 against, and 35 abstentions. This assembly expressed it deplored Russia's aggression against Ukraine in the strongest terms, and the Russian Federation must immediately and unconditionally withdraw all its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its international recognized borders. It is impossible to accept a contradiction between the purposes of the Charter of the United Nations and what the Assembly proclaimed and resolved accordingly, and the supposed right of veto, which in this particular case favored the continuation of a foolish war. In my way of thinking, the right of veto cannot be invoked against the overwhelming opinion of humanity, nor can war be waged to seize a foreign country and condemn people to a dictatorship. This is not the proper meaning of the unanimity required by Article 27, which is not established to give permission to destroy United Nations' more important objective. The United Nations must put an end to this war, for which it seems essential that the United Nations authorities appear in Ukraine and from there, in the very theater of the war, demand that Russian troops withdraw immediately out of Ukraine borders. There is no doubt that this is risky for those authorities, but it is also risky for a soldier to take a rifle and a helmet and face the enemy from a trench, and yet he does it. In the face of this act of courage and fulfillment of the duty the authorities of the United States should perform, they will have universal support. This war is damaging every human being. Russia must withdraw its troops from Ukraine and be free us from the unacceptable slaughter. Thank you very much for your kind attention. If you want to tell me your opinion and suggestions and receive my answer, please visit my webpage www.juanjoseguaresti.com. The best for all of you.